We are live, Chair.
Thank you, Kath. Good morning, Bore da pawb. Welcome to the Finance Panel meeting on the 26th of, 20th of February 2006. Can I welcome all the officers and all cabinet members and also the panel members. Do we have any apologies, Kath?
Yes, Chair. We've got apologies for Councillor Danny Bebb from panel. We've also received apologies from Councillor Rafe Devlin, Cabinet Member, and a few officers, Clive Pinney, Monitoring Officer, Dr. Richard Jones, Director of Education. We should have Marianne Evans in his absence, and James Chappell. We've got a couple of notifications. Councillor Jeremy Pugh has to leave at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Chair and it's not Councillor, Gareth Hall, representative from Governance and Audit Committee, will be joining us as soon as possible.
Okay, it's a fairly straightforward standard program, so we should be over within a couple of hours at least, maximum, hopefully. Thank you all for joining. So declarations of interest, any interest to declare? I assume not. Item 3, third quarter revenue forecast for the end of this financial year. It's the forecast that took place on the 31st of December. Councillor David Thomas, would you like to give us some highlights on this, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just do a very brief introduction to the report. As you state, it's the financial forecast for the year ending 31st of March 2026, as at the 31st of December 2025, so quarter 3. Within the report, Table 1 summarises the projected full-year outturn position across the Council's services, including the HRA and the school's delegated budget. An overall underspend position of £1.4 million is currently forecast, which includes a balanced position on the HRA and a £0.4 million overspend on schools delegated. The forecast outturn for non-ring fence budgets is an underspend of £1.8 million. And as is normal with this report, Appendix A provides a detailed summary at a service level. Section 2.3 looks at the forecast underspend, which has an increase of £0.5 million. It actually looks at the reasons for that, and 2.4 actually looks at what's offset that actual figure to give us the 1.4 million underspend. Cabinet approved the environment requests in quarter 2 report with regard to the use of reserves and allocation of the risk budget. This is reflected in the projections and Appendix A. £1.8 million of the risk budget has been drawn down, and further requests are being proposed within this report, and they're set out in section 5. As stated, Appendix A provides details of the forecast financial position for each service, with additional details set out for cost reductions not yet delivered but assured, any planned movements to or from reserves, and the anticipated use of the risk budgets. And further detail about the reasons for the forecast financial position for each service is provided in Appendix B. Section 3 looks at cost reductions, and if you'd said there were £12.3 million identified, and if you add the undelivered savings from previous years, we've got a total of £16 million of cost reductions that need to be delivered. And you can see the progress regarding cost reductions at Table 2 in the report. And the summary of that report shows that 69.6%, £11.2 million of agreed cost reductions have been delivered by the end of the third quarter. A further 6.6% or £1 million are assured of delivery by services within the 25-26 financial year. 3.3 million are described as unachieved and are still at risk of delivery this year. And 0.5 million is being mitigated through alternative delivery plans. As is normally the case, those services that show unachieved cost reductions must consider what remedial action needs to be taken to mitigate the impact and meet the required reduction. Section 4 looks at reserves. The reserves position is shown in Table 3, and that sets out the reserve position for the current financial year as forecasted 31st December 2025. And that shows that the opening reserve stands at £71.5 million, with the general fund reserve at £11.4 million. £15.9 million of specifically held reserves are planned to be used during this financial year. And with regard to schools set their budgets with an expected call on reserves of £1.6 million. This figure has since increased by £0.8 million to project a £2.4 million draw based on updated forecasts, and they're actually shown, the school's reserve movements are shown at table 4. Section 5 refers to environments and grants. With regard to grants, there have been additional grants received this quarter, and they're set out in Appendix C. Environments for cabinet approval are listed at 5.2, and all the details included in the report with regard to those environments. 5.3 looks at the drawdown of specific reserves as previously agreed with the Section 151 officer. And Section 5.4 shows the proposed transfer to reserves, and the following environments are proposed to transfer elements of the current underspend into specific reserves, thereby strengthening the Council's overall financial resilience, bearing in mind the challenges facing us in future years. And Section 6 looks at the financial risks, and it's the usual, just emphasising the fact that we've got a £3 million revenue reserve. Appendix C contains details in the environments approved for the risk budget. Again, the greatest financial risk is our ability to deliver a balanced budget over the medium and longer term. And just highlighting the fact that the Council remains under borrowed as we continue to utilise our cash reserves to underpin our cash flow. And Section 7 looks at the resource implications and the Section 151 officers' comments. And that concludes my report, Chair. I don't know if the Section 151 officer or the head of finance would like to add any comments to what I've just said. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, David. Can I thank you for a couple of additions or reinstatements of the school delegated reserves positions, a more detailed table. So thank you for that. And also for the Appendix B, I think, the flow in and out of the reserve budgets. So thank you for those two tables. So before I bring panel members in, Jane or Mary, would you like to comment on or reflect on your comments within Section 7, please?
Shall I come in first, and Jane, if you want to speak afterwards, is that all right? So yeah, I think as Councillor David said, really, we are in an improved position compared to at the end of Q2. There are still some. Obviously, we've still got gaps in future years for on the FRM, even though we've got a balanced budget coming through for council next week. But that more robust 5-year revenue budget planning is holding us in good stead, really, and this is a really pleasing position to be in, really, quite stable from my point of view. Thank you. And if Jane wants to add as well.
Not Mary. Jane? No.
From me, thanks, Chair.
Okay.
But happy to pick up any questions as we go.
Okay, sorry, you're very faint, Jane, but I did catch you. So that's fine. Right, members, I know we had questions. I think it was from Councillor Chris on the improved position for the third quarter compared to the second quarter. Would you like to expand on that, Chris?
Yes, Chair.
You were talking about whether that improvement could be sustained and things.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, well done. We got to this position. I think it's pleasing to see that it's positive. Was that a surprise, or was it anticipated, or is it a shock in relation to that? And then going forward, because we're always looking at what the end position will be, moving us into Q4 Do we anticipate that that's going to be maintained, or are there any surprises ahead? I mean, I do note that inflation has fallen, so that may be a positive position with some things. And I think it's a matter of trying to look at the glass being half full rather than half empty. So as I say, well done to the team behind the scenes for doing it, and we'll get into some of the detail as we go on. I'll stop there.
Councillor David, would you like to respond to?
Yeah, yes. The first one with regard to the fall in inflation, really good news to see it falling to 3%, and there's also hopefully some good news too regarding another cut in interest rates will obviously help the capital program, and that in turn will, in the long term anyway, help the revenue impact coming from the capital program. But with regard to the improved position, I think, as I said in my opening statements, section 2.3 actually outlines in some detail the areas that we have seen the improvements, but there have also been some areas that we've had problems, and that's offset. It's the overall balance is positive, but I think we've got to bear in mind that any budget is an organic beast, and it's going to change, and it'll move in all sorts of directions as we progress through the financial year, and an incredible number of impacts that can affect that. But it's pleasing to see where it is. There were some additional grants come in, nothing really significant from what I can see. There was about a few £100,000, I think, but it's down to general good performance within the services. I think they're really close to their budgets. They're monitoring them and managing them well. But at the moment, I saw no reason to believe that the situation should deteriorate by the year end. But again, you know, we've really got to be very, very careful, monitor it and manage it carefully.
Diolch, David. Mary, and then Jake.
Diolch. Was it a surprise? We did receive some grants that maybe we weren't expecting, so that sort of contributed to some of it as well. One of the areas I think that we need to highlight as having improved is around our temporary accommodation costs. Now, those have been a concern in the past, but those have reduced since Q2, the forecast for those. So, and that's, I think, reflects some of the progress that's been made in terms of other accommodation being available there as well. So, and as Councillor David said, really, we've got nothing to concern us that we'd expect this to deteriorate, but obviously we've got another six weeks to go to the end of the year, but there will be another forecast at the end of for the position at the end of February as well, just to keep us going through that and see where we are towards closer to the year end, really.
Yeah, diolch, Mary. The improvement in the temporary accommodation, has the demand gone down, or is that solely to do with having more cost-effective solutions? Or as Councillor Pete, did you want to? No, that's not your portfolio, is it, Councillor Pete? I can't remember who deals with housing now. It's Councillor Matthew.
Matthew, but Matt Perry might be coming in on that. I don't know.
Yes, Chair, if that's all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as Mary said, that the budget for on the general fund was very strained in terms of homelessness and temporary accommodation. So the service has developed a triage service which looks at more preventative type action, which basically, you know, it stops this cycle of people getting homeless. So there has been a reduction over the last few years, about 27-30%. And obviously the impact is then that we're not having that cost then in terms of temporary accommodation, B&Bs, those types of elements. So it's definitely having an impact in terms of that triage service.
Good, that's good news. I'm sure the ERCG scrutiny would be having a look at that at some point. Before I bring you in, Councillor Pete, Councillor Chris, I didn't bring you back in. Apologies after the responses. Did you want to follow up on any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we're in a positive position, and I hope that's going to continue moving forward. My point of raising that as a position is that when I look at some of the saving delivery position, there is certainly under the adult services where they're now saying that the 1.9 million savings is no longer going to be achievable or on there. And it just gives me there's like a flashing amber light for me in the sense of we rely on grants coming through as a part of that on there, and then when we've got savings targets which are either not going to be achieved or they're going to be missed and carried forward into a future year, it just gives me a little bit of, hang on a minute, is the position, or is it likely to change? And I just wanted to be on it. And I was pleased to note that we will get an update in February, at the end of this month, to be able to keep the foot on the pedal type of thing, so that we're not complacent. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's positive that we're doing what we're doing. I'll stop there, Chair.
Yes, no, thank you very much for highlighting that, Chris. There's a big shift between the Q2 outcome and the Q3. That 1.9 million has shifted from the considered achievable to the not achievable, not assured. And now we're sort of 6 weeks from the end of the financial year. Councillor Peter Roberts, what has changed? And is there likely to be any further change in the next 6 weeks?
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair. I'll reflect on social care as a whole so that you can deal with it in one go, if that's okay with you, because there are a few issues there, and I'll address the savings element. The budget as a whole has been largely stabilised this year. We're meeting the expectations coming in on the demographic side, but we're managing a lot of that within the service area. The equipment grant, which we'll see in the environments, the community equipment store, all authorities manage a community equipment store with their health authority. Powys run it slightly differently, that instead of renting off of a company the equipment, we purchase and then store and release as needed. That has been a strength for us this year, as one of the main suppliers in the market has left the market due to insolvency, whereas other authorities have struggled as a result of that to procure equipment. We've had that resource available to us, which has set us in good stead. It's meant we've been able to continue to support people, and this is one of our major cost avoidance issues. So that is a positive. In respect to the efficiencies, when I took over at the end of Q2, in our discussions with officers at that point, we saw a significant amount of savings that hadn't been achieved in two particular areas. And myself and the director asked officers to go back, look at the service areas and look and see what was realistically achievable, so that when we came into Q3, we were able to give you a clear picture of what could and could not be achieved within this financial year, rather than waiting until the end of year report and all of a sudden showing we were doing massively well, lots to deliver, and then not delivering at the end. There's two main areas which account for this. The first one, which is in the day opportunities, the changes to the staffing have taken longer to go through the processes, and that is where we are seeing an undeliverable saving this year, which is being mitigated largely by slippage within that service area. But that process of change is on course to now deliver in Q1 of the next financial year. So we're seeing a slippage, a rollover, a missed efficiency being mitigated, being rolled over, and then being delivered early in the next financial year. The second one, and this is the one that I mentioned in budget scrutiny here for this is the right sizing of dom care contracts. You'll have seen over a number of years, we've talked about right sizing, reducing double-handed, and we've had quite significant efficiency savings that we've hit year on year. This year, if we'd had the rating system that we have used this year of red, amber, green on efficiency savings, this saving would have been very much in the high amber area as being one, because it's dependent on being able to identify clients that are well enough to have a different service. We found this year that it has been harder to drive out the efficiencies within the system. The right sizing is pretty much at the end of its process in terms of historic contracts. And we are now recognizing that. We haven't offered a similar saving in the budget this time round because we don't believe we will be able to deliver a saving with enough confidence to put it into a budget. But the process is now continuing. And as we move forward, that constant review of packages, right sizing of packages will become part of our business as usual budget management process in year, and that will be used to mitigate new clients coming into the system. So that's where the changes have occurred. It's basically it's a half-year review of the savings and a really detailed drill into what is and is not achievable, and coming back to the finance panel with a clear position about what we can and can't achieve at this point. I don't know if Nina wants to add anything to that.
Thank you, Pete. Can I just bring Pete Lewington in first, and Corinne as well? I assume both hands are about social services or not?
No, mine was on another point.
Oh, can you sit on it for a while, Corinne?
Yeah. Could I ask about the direct payments refund?
Can you just sit on that just for a moment while we deal with the non-delivery of savings here? It's around the day time activities. The lost the figure now, 1.8 million, wasn't it? Oh, 1.9 million. Apologies. Was that overly ambitious? And are you guaranteeing that it'll be delivered really early in the next financial year? Because in the next financial year,
Sorry, yeah, no, I was just going to come in to say, no, the 1.9 million is not all around the day opportunities. The day opportunities is a relatively small cost efficiency saving, which we are rolling forward. But as Councillor Peat has said, we have put in place mitigation to cover that within the current financial year. The majority of the 1.9 that has now been deemed unachievable is within the strength-based review of packages of care. So as Councillor Peat was saying, this is about right sizes of packages for home care, which is obviously a big area, but also in terms of supported living and residential support as well. So that is something that we've been doing within the service now for a couple of years. We've been very successful over recent years and delivered significant savings. This was a target. It was an ambitious target. But as we work through the year, it's all dependent on individuals and individuals' package of care being reviewed, and where possible, you know, if things have improved, we're able to reduce packages, etc. So what we found is that window of opportunity for reducing those packages of care is less than has been shown in previous years. And we're finding now we are right sizing packages earlier when people are coming into the system. We've got enablement being undertaken, so we're putting people through enablement early on as well. So when they're initially receiving packages of care, they're more, you know, they are right sized from the beginning, etc. So we've moved into from cost efficiencies to cost avoidance is probably what I'm saying as well, which is a positive. So, the service is moving to get things right as soon as possible. I think obviously this needs to remain a focus and a priority, and it absolutely will for the service moving forward, just to give you that assurance as well. But as you know, we go through the financial year, as was said earlier, budgets, cost efficiencies are always subject to ongoing review. And that's absolutely right to do so. And what I would also add is that the changes in the bottom line for adult social care have been around the community equipment store, which Councillor Peat has already talked about, and then the transformation project, which we've also put in for environment requests for as well. Chair, would it be okay if I just went back to a question from Councillor Walsh earlier around quarter four?
Sorry, can we bottom this out? Sorry.
Yeah.
What is the figure about that's not been achieved around right sizing?
It's just over £1 million.
£1 million, and
yes.
Is that being rolled forward or in addition to the £6 million you're going to save over the next 2 years, or is it part of that £6 million in next year's budget?
It'll be rolled forward. There isn't £6 million thinking for next year, but it's
no, it's 6 over the next 2 financial years, isn't it, roughly?
Yes. It'll be rolled forward. Yes.
And I get slightly, Councillor Roberts. I know you were in portfolio holder when this current year's budget was set, but I get really frustrated when you were putting ambitious targets in when in the budget this time last year. They should be achievable. You've gone through scrutiny, assuring everybody that those savings are achievable, and now you're describing these as ambitious targets, Councillor Roberts. It's not a really good way to set a budget, to be honest, because it's been through so many processes, and I'm quite surprised with with that description of a particular savings line within the budget. I know, Pete, you weren't portfolio holder, but it's.
I think
surprised really.
To be fair to my predecessor, this is a budget heading that has had ambitious targets for 3, if not 4 budgets, where those targets have actually been met.
Okay.
And the advice from officers, the advice from the then portfolio holder to the rest of Cabinet was that this will be a challenging saving to make, but there are no low-hanging fruit savings in our budget now. All of the efficiencies that have been put before Cabinet and before full council over the last 2 to 3 years have included elements of risk within them.
No,
this time we have not been able to achieve in a very large area, but it's in a very large area that has delivered year on year very large efficiencies previously. And I think it's actually a testament in a way to the officers that they have driven out of these costs and are in a position now where our actual cost within the service and our draws down on the risk budget to manage our demography is being managed within budget. So
I completely understand that, Councillor Roberts. I know officers are working extremely hard to try and keep down the costs because the overall cost of adult social care has ballooned quite considerably over the last few years. I know reference to efficiency savings are important, but you've got to bear in mind that the overall cost of the adult social services has ballooned quite considerably. And I do appreciate that. It's really difficult to keep the pressure on. Councillor Chris, is this on the same subject, or shall I bring Nina in first? Chris, you're on mute.
Sorry, Chair. It is, and I'm grateful that you give me the opportunity to come back in. I'm assured by what Councillor Peters mentioned that the system has modelled some of the demography issues in there, because that's what I'm trying to get, is that we're being proactive and anticipating rather than reactive to that on there. But I just want that reassurance that we are modelling the projections of increased demand as well as reacting to it, but doing things slightly differently. And I think Nina mentioned some of that about some of the earlier interventions, so that we prevent people coming a main burden within the system, or we steer them in a different direction in order to be able to get a better outcome and maintain independence and independent living. That's the goal that we should be trying to achieve on. The other question I have, and it comes with some of the comments that Nina made, was about efficiencies and that comes across as similar language that we were using when we'd had the Newton analysis. And I just want to make sure of that 1.9 million that's in here, we're not double counting what's being identified within the Newton analysis, or is it a part of the Newton analysis that you're now moving on to? Because this, I believe, has started before we'd had that analysis, and there were some expectations around how that would give us some efficiencies and savings coming through. So I just want to get that clarification, if I may.
Thank you. That's probably put more succinctly than I tried to explain earlier. Shall I bring Nina in? I know the leader's had his hand going up and down. Whether you want to come in on the subject after Nina, Jake, or not. Nina.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Quite a lot of questions there. So if I miss anything, please just remind me and I'll pick it up after. I think, you know, when we're looking at the target that was set in terms of strength-based reviews, right sizing of packages, I think it's just important to remember that these are individual people. You know, they're all individuals that need to be assessed and looked at in terms of their individual needs and situations, etc. So when you're setting targets, I think it's important to bear that in mind. These are not set changes that are known and can be known at the point of setting budget. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, you know, that's how we are looked. There are no easy kind of savings to be taken. You know, there's lots of improved performance across adult social care. You know, in terms of dom care, we're delivering more hours every week than we have been for years. You know, the trend in terms of the increase in the hours has been really really impressive and really good performance. The number of people waiting for home care has reduced significantly over recent months and years, etc. So really positive. But of course, that means we're keeping people at home for longer, keeping people independent as much as we can do as well, which is really positive. But that does come with a cost as well, obviously. I'm sure you all understand that as well. In terms of the demography and modelling, yes, we do. We look when we're planning budgets, etc., to do what we can. Demography is and has been pretty much held at risk across social services, which I think is really testament to the work and the improvement work we're doing, both in terms of cost efficiencies, but cost avoidance, really, really important. In terms of the budget for adult social care, I'd just like to, you know, just point out that it's the contract provider uplifts that have really been hitting adult social care over the last couple of years. And when you look at the cost pressures and the increases in adult social care budget, it's that contract provider uplifts, which are largely, you know, outside the control of the budget. You know, we are determined depending on CPI, RPI, contracts that are in place, etc. So I just want people to remember that as well. And then just Candice Walsh asked about the work we've done in terms of a diagnostic in adult social care and mobilising change, and the opportunities that have been identified as part of that diagnostic. Just to assure you, there has not been any double counting. The potential window of opportunities and cost efficiencies to be delivered from that piece of work are scheduled to start from next financial year, not this financial year. So I just wanted to provide that assurance for you as well. Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Nina. I know it's a hugely difficult area. Can I just, I don't know whether you provide this to the scrutiny group that looks into this, but do you publish a table on a regular basis about number of packages involved, hours delivered, costs per hour, simple headline figures over the last 2 or 3 years, so we can see the change in that, so we can, because we see more and more of the council's resources going into adults services as across the rest of Wales and the UK, but it's hard to get a handle on what is changing. You know, what is costing the council so much more money. You did mention, I know the third parties, our contractors, I shouldn't call them contractors, but our providers, the increase in that. And I assume you're still having that open book tendering process, so you can understand their costs as well. So, but I think a very basic table about the cost per package, packages delivered, etc., would be useful for the councillors to get a understand and try and get a grip and clearer understanding of the pressures that your service is under.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to come in. The Adult Social Care does a monthly performance report, which goes into detail about, it includes those details on number of packages of home care, for example, how many what is the average hours of those packages, how many of those are double-handed, for example. So we've got a wealth of information and statistics, performance information, and every month that is shared with Cabinet and with scrutiny. In terms of that kind of, I think benchmarking is what you're getting at. I think we've got in our next scrutiny meeting in June, I'm pretty sure we've got an agenda item for some annual kind of benchmarking. We get statistics that come from Welsh Government, I think about once a year. So we do that comparison, and we took it to scrutiny last year, and it's definitely on the forward work programme to come through scrutiny in the next focus of work as well.
Okay, thank you. I know having those benchmarking across other local authorities from the past, it's pretty difficult sometimes to get a clear and understanding of in comparison with others. But I think the wider council needs to be aware of the costs involved. Before I go back to Councillor Pete and then Karina and then Jeremy, Jane, did you want a quick comment on this?
Yeah, just to come in. Can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes, brilliant.
So I think just to offer some support, I suppose, in terms of the council's budget and adult social care. You know, we've had it played out here today about the demographics, the increase in demand across Wales. It's not just a Powys factor, but obviously with our demographic and that ageing population being more severe compared to others, it's an added pressure for us. But in context, although we are finding it more difficult to deliver against the savings proposed, when you look at the overall adult social care budget, they are holding that position very well. You know, they are bringing the budget. The overspend isn't in total the same as that level of unachieved savings. It's below that level. And if we look at the level of risk that was highlighted at the beginning of last year by the service, which was in excess of 6 million, we haven't had to draw on the risk budget to cover that off. That's being held within the service budget as well. So I think that context is important when you look at the overall service budget and consider that as well.
Thank you, Jane, for giving that a little bit of context around it. Jake, Shall I bring you in now? please, and then I'll-
If that's all right, my hand has been bobbing up and down because people have more than adequately answered some of the lines of inquiry that you had that I was going to step in and comment on. But if I can perhaps summarise a little and go back over the questions, as it were. Councillor Aled, you're absolutely right to focus on the big spending areas. There's broad interest in the fact that the adult social care budget in particular has grown, obviously, together with children's services budgets. These things are, as has been described by others, to some extent at the subject to the vagaries of market provision, and a lot has been done around that. So you're right to focus on the money. So this line of inquiry is absolutely spot on, and I thank you for drawing attention to that. Obviously, as we progress through, Councillor Chris was asking about the budget, managing the budget, and the delivery of cost savings. Obviously, in a lot of areas, if you look at the tables, the cost savings have improved considerably from Q2 to Q3. But in this particular area, there is some struggling. But as you've heard, those are being mitigated by other measures, and the effort that we put in with consultants Newton Europe previously. You've also heard that delivery is yet to come as part of our transformation program in future years, and we're not double counting. Those will be carried forward. The question that I and Cabinet members, Councillor Peat and others, are raising to officers is, if you've managed to mitigate those lack of efficiency savings this year, are there longer term savings we could take out of those areas where you've mitigated? And I think there's a mix there of yes and no and maybe. Nina, I know your hand has popped up, but so we are providing that challenge really on an ongoing basis, and I know Scrutiny is doing that. But if I can just come back to Councillor Chris's question about the budget surprises, etc. It's not beyond reason that we still might get additional grants coming in from the Welsh Government before the end of the financial year. So in the next few weeks, we do see this happening sometimes. There has been some movement, as you've seen. In many respects, that's good if we can handle that. And our way of dealing with that, as you've seen, is that we put that into bespoke reserves for next year to give us more robustness in our budget for 2027 onwards going forward. So to try and dampen down the impact that we know is going to come from reduced government budgets going forward. So that might happen. In terms of our cost exposure, I think we're moving in the right direction. And you've heard from Councillor David and us, I don't think there are any real surprises that we anticipate coming there, which would adversely affect the projected outturn. And how have we done it? Well, some of this is down to chasing those efficiencies that between Q2 and Q3 that we were disappointed about, and looking at every opportunity to manage down costs, and in some areas manage down vacancies in areas as a part of that cost efficiency saving. You'll see in the table those areas that have done that and how they've been done. So it's really looking at every nook and cranny for the efficiencies that we can drive out to turn around the position we saw at Q2 to Q3, and we're carrying on with that to year end. So it's a little bit of everything. Aled, thank you for allowing me to come in and say that.
Thank you, Jake. Apologies to Pete and Karina. I know Jeremy needs to go at 11. Can I bring Jeremy in first? And then I'll come back to you, Nina, just in case you can cover off. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, some of the undelivered savings, do we go back and scrutinise them to see if they should have been put in the first place? It's not about not making them. It's about learning from them going forward to improve our budget decision making. And sometimes things we put in and we think we can achieve, if we'd really looked at it in a different way, we'd have understood that it wasn't achievable. And do we scrutinise this? Would be my question.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm not going to let social services come back in because it's a wider council question, really. Can I bring Councillor David Thomas in on that?
Yes,
and then I can come back to you as well, Jake, if you wanted to say something further. But David.
Yeah, I think it's the same as any proposal, particularly within a budget. As I said earlier, budget's got to be flexible. There's always a great level of flexibility within any budget, even a household budget for that matter. But what Jeremy's talking about is a straightforward PDR, basically a plan to review. So if you're planning to deliver savings and you don't deliver them, then you need to review why you didn't deliver them and you learn the lessons. And I'm pretty confident to say that is happening within service areas. But the one thing I would say generally, listening to the discussion about savings overall, any organization that can deliver somewhere in the region of a 50-60 million pounds worth of savings, efficiencies, etc., in a 4-year period has got to be doing something right. And when you consider, that the start of this administration started 4 years, the cupboard is pretty well bare because we'd already made about 100 million pounds of the savings prior to that. So it's you're going to see ambitious savings proposals coming forward. There's no doubt about that, because we're really scraping the bottom of the barrel. And it's good to see that this year, the majority of them are not savings this year, and efficiencies are not about service cuts. They're more about service redesign. But I do agree, yes, it's absolutely essential, Councillor Jeremy, that we do learn from where our failures. And if we are putting forward savings that we don't deliver, then a simple PDR should be put in place. And I'm pretty confident to say that is the case. Thank you.
May I ask, Chair, if possible, if in later days, if someone could give us some examples of them that we've looked at and what we've learned from different things, please?
I think we're already doing that. We did implement a system this year, didn't we, Chair, if you remember, whereas where there have been problems with savings delivery, we've actually given a brief resume as to why those savings weren't delivered. And when we brought them I think we brought them to finance panel, I'm sure we did. But if you want more detail around an individual savings, a saving that has been proposed, Councillor Jeremy, or any other member for that matter, I'm sure if a specific request were to be put to a particular service, then they'd be more than willing to accommodate you on that basis.
Thank you.
Yes, there's always a paper in June time, isn't there, about those savings that haven't been delivered or something's not quite as planned, and that's is an important document, to be honest. And those savings that haven't or unlikely to be delivered will have been taken into account in setting this coming year's budget as well, won't they? So you're starting from a firm foundation for the following year's budget. So thank you to finance officers and Councillor Thomas for that response. Was there anything else you wanted to say, Councillor Jeremy, or shall I go to I'm a bit loath to come back to you now, Nina.
No, I'm fine.
Can I bring in Peter Lewington and Karina first, and then
Chair, can I just give Councillor Jeremy a specific reassurance?
Okay, go on then.
Yeah, I was concerned when I took over the portfolio about the level of undelivered savings at that point. I asked officers to give me a thorough review of where those savings were not coming through, so that we didn't make the mistake of introducing similar savings in the coming budget. And as I told the scrutiny, the area where there is a large saving that we have still to deliver, that has not come forward as a saving potential in this year's budget. So we have been doing that. We have been looking in a number of the service areas. I know I've done it. I know some of my colleagues, if not all of them, have done it. We looked before we started setting this year's budget to make sure we were not introducing savings of a type that have been overly challenging to deliver this year. So we have learned that. We have been learning that lesson.
Okay, thanks for that reassurance, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Pete Lewington, apologies and thanks for your patience.
No, that's fine. No, thank you, Chair. Thank you. I guess it's just a question or a comment around sort of non-delivery of savings and targets and realistic targets. I do agree it's right that we should look for savings, but sometimes I wonder if it's savings because the budget was unrealistic in the first place. So I used to work with one particular manager in my previous life who would always set a budget at, say, 100 quid, and then he would come in at £90 every year, and everybody go, "Great job, well done, you've saved 10 quid." But it was because he set the £100 too high in the first place. So I sometimes feel this is just such a moving feast. You know, we have savings, we have varmints, we take money from the risk budget, and now I sort of see next year's financial resources model comes into play. So I'm just referring back to section 3 of the report and table 2 on the cost reductions. And under the not achieved column, there's a £500,000, I think, for highways that's in there. When I then look in the appendix, it says that's now going to be addressed via the financial resources model in next year, 26-27. So I assume that saving obviously won't be addressed this year. It's going to be picked up in 26-27. And I think if I've heard right from previous scrutiny committees, I think that's now highways are intending to address that through what they termed income generation. So not savings, but income generation. And I think it'll be things like more increases in car parking charges, commercial waste and licensing. So yeah, I guess I just find this all such a moving feast when we're talking about all of this, Chair. It'd be nice to have a simple budget with some simple, realistic targets that we could get to instead of all this continual juggling. But the question I was trying to get to with the highways there is,
Okay.
will all of these income generation targets now be reflected in next year's sort of council tax budget papers for charges that will, I guess, be coming to full council next month? So I'm just trying to understand how this all links together. Sorry for a bit of a ramble.
No. Thank you, Councillor Lewington. It's next week, not next month.
Next month, yeah.
Budget. I can't see Jackie Charlton, cabinet member. She's not in the meeting, is she? No. In that case, Matt, can you respond to Jackie Lewington's comments, please?
Thank you, Chair, and I totally agree with Councillor Peter. It's not ideal, so we got 506k worth of undelivered savings within HTR. The bulk of those are related to service redesign. So picking up on the earlier points from social services, sometimes we do put things forward which can take a bit of time in terms of, because ultimately we could be looking at staffing restructures, those types of things. So they are being carried forward to 26-27. But just to give you assurance, in terms of income generation, in terms of car parks, that's been frozen for next year. So we are tasked as a service to ensure we do deliver on what we said we would deliver on in terms of service redesign. So that's the bulk of it. There are some elements that we haven't achieved, as in blue badge income. That's part of the 506k. And then we did consider reducing the verge maintenance down to 2 cuts per year. Again, that's been troublesome. But the bulk of that 506 is service redesign. And unfortunately, we didn't get that over the line because we do need to link in terms of digital transformation, those types of aspects. But just to answer your point, that will be delivered next year. We won't be relying on income to offset that.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. Pete, did you want to come back on that? I was just looking at Appendix A. The forecast underspend is 520, isn't it? Half a million pounds.
It's £500,000. Yeah. I think it's on page 13, Chair.
Yeah, and that's totally made up of the undelivered savings around service design, I assume, or has that been a mixture of other things as well? Would you be able to?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I agree, Chair. That was just what was confusing me. I think it's on page 13 there. It says 506k is reported as unachieved. This will be addressed through the FRM next year. So yeah, I wanted to ask the same question as you, really. So
okay. Jane, did you want to respond to this, Jane?
Yes, sorry. I didn't. I thought you said a different name, but yes, if I may, Chair. I agree with Councillor Peake. I would love this budget to be much simpler than it is, but that's totally unrealistic, I think, in an organisation of this size. We do our best to estimate where we're going to be across a year, but we are a demand-led organisation. and much of that demand comes from things beyond our control. So when pulling together a budget, we have to consider that risk. We have to consider that flexibility too when we actually get a budget through to approval stage. We do look at underspends in previous years and challenge services about could that potentially release budget back to help deal with our pressures. So I want to assure you that we definitely do put that challenge in. And the budget, unfortunately, is always going to change as we move through a year. And that's the reason we have our environment process in place so that we can flex that budget to respond to that demand and additional costs that are coming through. And that's a vital part and is really good, sound financial management in terms of a budget. So I just wanted to highlight some of those concerns. But if it could be simpler, then absolutely, I would welcome it wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Karina, and then you've been a bit very...
Thanks very much.
Karina, Pete's just put his hand up.
Okay.
Did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, sorry, Karina. And yeah, thanks for that, Jane. Just on your point on demand-led, I guess that was just leading me, I suppose, almost off the back of Councillor Jeremy's earlier point around learnings. Do we have good models for forecasting what our demand may be then, just so as we're not hit with unexpected demand levels, or are they really just things outside of our control?
Can I come back in, Chair?
I was going to carry on, Jane.
Yes, please, yeah.
Councillor Jake, please, you go first.
No, I mean, clearly, we've got a number of people in our system, haven't we, that are moving from children's services to adult services. We know they're in transition, and therefore there are things that one can anticipate in carrying people's needs potentially through their lifetime. But also we do track the demographics that we have, our aging population, and people moving through the care system. And our efforts, of course, are to shift left, and we're doing that through very clear collaborative work with Powys Teaching Health Board, through messaging with the Welsh Government over their changing where the emphasis on financial rewards, incentives might come into us and other local authorities. So yes, there's an awful lot that is known. There are some things that change. There are vagaries. Obviously, people's health condition deteriorate, and they might need a much bigger package within year. We might have children. Sorry, Councillor Sandra, but we might have children with extreme needs move into the county from across the border somewhere that we have to respond to and put packages around. So yes, there's much that we do know, and there are things that we don't know, and therefore that's where we hold finances in risk in order to mitigate some of that. But we are constantly seeking to shift left. And if I can just say, look, the household analogy, managing our household income, goes so far. It's obviously very helpful for us all to visualize some of that. But when you're dealing with a 360 million plus budget across a range of complex service areas, that's where the analogy has to stop. Local government finances are extremely complex, made up of a range of direct grant, made up of rate raising that we do, and a series of other in-year fund incentives that we receive. So it's incredibly complex. And Councillor Aled, you will know it's not just this administration, although I'm pleased with how we've managed costs down. Your administration previously, I think on average we've saved about £10 million a year for the last 15 years. So, there is a collective effort that we do here. And of course, we do constantly try and learn from what's gone on, what others are doing, what will work well best for the people of Powys. And that's whatever political parties in control. We always work together to try and do that, don't we?
Thank you, Lida. We really need to press on. Can I bring Karina before I bring in Jane? And
thanks very much. I was also going to express a sort of concern about the roads. You mentioned that concerned about 49 million of funding from the Welsh Government, or, you know, it hasn't come in yet. That's the work done on the trunk roads. And also, it looks like you've only spent a third of your revenue budget so far, and things are getting moved into next year. It's a very complex situation. You're in receipt of various grants. And so, yeah, how's all that going to pan out? And then I wanted to ask about recruitment. In children's services, I noticed the budget has balanced, but largely because you haven't filled staff vacancies, as far as I can see. And that means work that's not getting done, possibly, I don't know. And also other roles such as environmental health and the place-based planning officer you haven't recruited to. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. Jane, your hand is up first. Do you want to go first, or?
It was in relation to the previous discussion. I just wanted to remind
quickly
that we do an awful lot of horizon scanning. I think the leader set out all of those things that impact on us, but I just wanted to point out that we do a mid-year review as well in terms of that financial position, the economic factors impacting on us, and any policy decisions at a Welsh Government level or national level that may impact as well. So sorry, Chair, I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Jane. I'll come to Matt to deal with the first element of Karina's question. If I know it was said before that it's a demand-led organisation. Well, it's not completely demand-led organisation, because if your area around potholes was a demand-led organisation, the budget would be extremely different, and you would probably have a far greater budget. But Matt, deal with the trunk road issue for Karina. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So in terms of our capital programme, we have roughly got about 30% left, but that is on target. It does seem a lot of money in terms of the 20 million, but I think, as you just said, Chair, that, you know, on the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot in terms of the highway network. So whilst we're really grateful for things like the floor that came up, we had the levelling up funding, 7.5 million, highways capital internal 6.5. We got the LGBI, which is 5.9, all these accumulated, and we did do quite a chunk of work, 118 kilometres of highway resurfaced to date. But just to give you an example, that 118 kilometres, if you break that down, it works out about 178k per kilometre. So if we was to do the entire network, the 5,000 kilometres, you're talking hundreds, probably 800, 900 million. So that's why we've got the AMP that we work to try and obviously target those areas that are most affected. But yeah, you know, all grant money is welcome, but we are trying to plan it as best as possible. But we are still on target to achieve the full spend for this year.
Okay, thanks. Karina, you did. I'm sorry, I might have missed what you said, Matt. Around is the Trunk Road Agency slower paying that this time round than usually are?
Yeah, so we still got a contract with the Trunk Road Agency. We tend to bring a lot of that in towards this quarter.
Last quarter.
But you know, again, that's work that's ongoing throughout the year. So between us and the Trunk Road, they contract a lot of work to us. We also use local contractors as well, because we're mindful that we haven't got the resource just internally to deal with all that demand, especially with grant work. But yeah, we are still working with them.
And then Councillor Sandra on the posts that haven't been filled.
Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you. Karina's next element.
Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Karina. When I was in scrutiny, this is something that I used to always home in on. My fears were that if there was a staff missing from that post, that piece of work would not be done. But I just want to really reassure you that that is not the case in Children's Services. I want to thank and congratulate our staff in Children's Services, because they really do work as one team, irrespective of which team they are working in. They all rally around, they all support each other, and they make sure that any child is looked after. They put the child at the centre of what they do, irrespective of which department they are in. They work together collectively to ensure that that job is done. And I think the Q3 report for Children's Services does prove this. It's very, very difficult. We've had problems with WCCIS, which is the computer system. We're all aware of that. But besides lots and lots of difficulties that our staff are under, and they do some work under a lot of pressure and stress, and some of the cases that they're involved with are not very pleasant, but they do support each other and they do help each other. And I can reassure you that our children are in the best place as far as Powys is concerned. And I wanted to just make sure that you're aware of that as well. Thank you very much, Chair.
Diolch, Sandra. Karina, did you want to respond to that?
Do you have a grow your own social worker staff programme?
Chair, could I come in and answer that if that's okay?
Okay, and before you do, you had a third element to your question. I can't quite remember what it was, Karina.
Well, I mentioned place-based planning.
Oh yeah, we'll
environmental health. Yeah. It's just thank you.
We'll come back to that. Sorry, Sharon. Go on, Sharon.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I mean, you're right in the sense that the way in which we've balanced our budget, there is an element of using the staffing budget to be able to balance. But in terms of assuring you that, the service is a really progressive service, and we were really considering this year about being able to be in a much better, stable financial position to go into the next financial year. And by and large, we've achieved that in terms of all the work that has happened over the 3 strands that we concentrate on. But to assure you around posts, those posts that have been put on hold are posts that we're going to utilise in a much more progressive way for this next financial year. So it isn't that services aren't covered. All our frontline teams are absolutely covered and staffed. It's those posts that kind of sit on the periphery that actually we question, do we need them or not? And actually that puts us in a much stronger position for this next financial year, because through our Grow Our Own scheme, I've got potentially up to 8 to 10 students that are qualifying this summer. And I don't have 8 to 10 social work posts right now for them to automatically go into, which is a really good news story in terms of how that's worked and evolved over recent years. But by holding some of those positions, it's allowed me to be a little bit more flexible in terms of the needs of the service. Where do we need to grow and expand? And then how do we use that staffing money going forward to be a bit more progressive? But we needed to put some of that on hold just to get to a better financial position to go forward.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm not 100% sure what you mean by using staff in a more progressive way, but I'll leave that to Children's Social Services scrutiny because we really press for time. Chief Exec, Bore da, Emma.
Bore da, Chair. Thank you very much. I just wanted to reiterate the point around demand-led. Local government is fundamentally demand-led, and we know that in particular in respect of people. So the statutory services where demand is shaped by people is shaped by our residents, not by the council itself. So as we all know, that's predominantly education and social services. So the point around the pothole that you queried, the demand is outpacing our funding in respect of those people's services. And the consequence of this is the visible infrastructure decline is a symptom, not a cause. So when discretionary services such as road maintenance exist, but you've got statutory services where demand is outweighing the funding we're receiving, what's happening is those discretionary services are basically feeling the squeeze, and they've had to absorb that for many, many years, the result being rising potholes. And I think it's important to recognise that in Powys, with the extensive network that we have, actually, even if we had 100 million more pounds, I don't think that we could actually address the whole network to the level that society would want. Don't get me wrong, I want less potholes, the same as everybody else. But the demand-led services that people are driving in terms of social services and education continue to squeeze those other areas. So it's a symptom, not a cause, in terms of the potholes, I'm afraid.
Yes, thank you, Emma. We leave that there, but the council does have a role in shaping as well. But Councillor Peter Lewington.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sorry, I know you want to move on. Sorry, there was one other question I just wanted to ask about that 500,000, and I forgot, so apologies. Is why is that coming out of the FRM next year and not coming out of the risk budget?
It's just rolling forward the savings. Matt, you had your hand up for a
Yeah,
moment.
sorry.
There you are.
Sorry, Chair. If it's to do with HDR, yeah, we've made the commitment that we would deliver on it. We're confident we can deliver on it. Unfortunately, it was just we didn't get it over the line for this year, but we are determined to do it for 26-27.
Okay, understood. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, it's just added to the savings list for the following year, really, isn't it? In a way. Thank you. We really do need to press on. I know in the pre-meeting, Councillor Pete, you did ask around identification of incomes. I know you touched on it when you were questioning Matt earlier. Is there more for you to say? There's also Jeremy, who is no longer in the meeting. He wanted to know how much income Powys is losing by post-16 being educated outside the county. He did quote quite a big percentage of post-16 getting educated outside the county, and since that is grant funded per head, I assume, more or less. Councillor James Gibson-Watt, I've seen you very patiently. Thank you for joining us this morning. But how much income are is being lost by Powys' potential income when we see such a degree of post-16 being educated outside the county? Thank you.
Well, excuse me, Chair.
You kick off, James, and then Marianne can fill in the.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfectly. Yes, fine. I don't have the exact figure, obviously, but the formula, the post-16 formula, is heavily weighted towards numbers. Basically, it's learner numbers. There are smaller elements of we get a small uplift for orality, but it's pretty minor. And the truth, apart from, I mean, I'll leave Marianne to come up with an exact figure if she has it to hand. But the truth is that the grant funding we get doesn't cover the cost of the provision. The schools are having to cross-subsidise within their delegated budget to sustain that, and that applies even to our largest schools. So it's in a sense, it's not just about the income we're losing. It's also about the fact that the grant that we get now simply doesn't cover the cost. And I think there's been some quite good cost analysis done by consultants brought in to look at this. And again, Marianne can fill in the figures, but generally speaking, I think the way we fund our sixth forms is, although we get the grant from Welsh Government is largely per head based, the way we fund it is in order to sustain these small sixth forms, we're having to fund a course. So a school gets the same amount of money for a course with 5 learners as it does if there's 10 in the classroom. And that's a pretty unique in Wales, actually. I don't think there's any other authorities doing it that way. But it leaves a shortfall, basically, at school level often, and regardless of the size of the sixth form. But Marianne can come in with specific figures. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you, James. The line's not brilliant, but we got the gist of that. I do hope we're not using schools that have using delegated budget to cross-subsidise post-16. You sort of indicated in your response that it did, but it's against financial regulations, isn't it?
Well, that's arguable. That argument could be made, but if they didn't do that, we wouldn't have any sixth forms, to put it bluntly, because, as I say, the grant doesn't cover the cost of the provision. So
yeah, but no, I accept it's fine for it to come from central pots, but not from the schools delegated. Marianne.
Bore da.
Marianne.
Just in relation to the question that was posed about what's the impact on financial impact of pupils moving out of county. So with post-16, the post-16 sixth forms are funded by post-16 grant from MEDR, and we receive something like 4,900 per pupil. It's based on 3-year retention rates, average of 3-year retention rates, plus uplifts, as Councillor James said there. So the uplifts for sparsity and Welsh medium in particular. So we know we lose about 600 pupils out of county, and they go for a variety of reasons, and they go to a variety of settings. And some will go for A level, some will go for vocational. So based on that pure arithmetic, we should be receiving, if all those people stayed in our sixth forms, we should be receiving about 2.9 million extra in the post-16 grant, but obviously we don't. And again, that's an assumption that those 600 would remain in our sixth forms, and we know that they wouldn't remain in our sixth forms. 50% or more would go to the college or to other providers. Yeah. So that'll give you sort of a ballpark figure. But it does, in terms of the how we deliver within that pot of funding that we receive, the impact on that, unless we can improve our retention rates within our sixth forms, our funding will be decreasing year on year. And again, it's that downward spiral of how much courses can we afford within that? And just to say that this year we're working really well with our schools, with our heads, and we've got a curriculum offer that is affordable within the grant that we currently have. If schools then decide to put on a class that's not within our agreed offer, then the question is, where does that class get funded from? That's the question there. Again, you can see, we do run very, very small classes, and we do question whether they're sustainable and viable. So, I hope that gives you a bit of an overview of where we are.
Mary, can you answer your own question then, please? So if a school does put on an additional course that's not funding, how is it funded?
Well, that is a question, isn't it? So currently all our schools have agreed to deliver next September 2026 within the current funding envelope.
So there aren't going to be any courses outside that?
They shouldn't be. So all schools signing up to our Powys Gweched model, the model that we work to. It's a collaborative model, and all the schools have worked in different partnerships this year to sort of bring that offer together.
Okay, so a few years ago there was a clampdown on the use of school delegated budget to fund sixth forms. Is that happening at all now?
Well, we fund through the grant. That's
yes,
it.
I know.
In a nutshell, we fund post-16 through the grant and no more.
Yes, I know, but once delegated, do you think some schools are using resources aimed at pre-16 to fund post-16 courses?
Well, as I said, all our courses are funded by the grant.
I think, can I come in here, Chair?
Yes, James, go on.
Yeah, I think the difficulty here is it's very hard to disaggregate spending within a school, between pre and post 16 within a school setting, because inevitably there's a shared resource, isn't there? Buildings, teachers, the sports field, you name it. Yeah. It's all one budget. And I mean, many years ago, when I was involved in this more with a different hat on, there was a suggestion made by the funding body at the time that schools should run two separate budgets, and that was rejected by Welsh Government, and actually for good reason, really. Although it annoyed quite a few members of that particular board, that was rejected because it is so difficult to disaggregate that spending, and actually would be a bit of a nightmare to manage at school level. And so single schools budget was sustained, and that is the way things are now. But it is inevitable. There's some degree of movement across that boundary, whether it be in cash or in kind, and I think it is said that a sixth form of 180, you need a sixth form of 180 plus for it to be self-sustaining and offer a decent range, an acceptable range of courses. Well, we do have one sixth form of that size, but even that is proving financially difficult for the school to sustain. And I get that information from the head teacher. So this is an arguable point, and actually in a way it is semantics, because it is, however hard you try to do it, I suspect you're always going to struggle to disaggregate. But yes, it is absolutely the case that you shouldn't be moving cash, overtly from one across that boundary. That would be against the financial regulations. But there's absolutely no way of preventing shared use of resources. It's and nor should there be, really, if you think about it. Whilst we have sixth form, I mean, if we accept we have sixth forms in our schools, then that process is inevitable.
Yes, and obviously we're looking forward to your proposals around.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, but I would like to endorse. I would like to endorse Marion's comments about the change that has occurred since we launched that review. The change at school level towards issues such as collaboration, the planning of provision between schools, and particularly in your part of the county in the north, and seeing very, very good work between the schools to make this a more efficient system with less duplication, more collaboration, and a broadening of the offer, and a willingness to collaborate with other providers other than schools. That's exactly the direction we need to take this, and it is being mirrored across the county, I have to say, to a varying degree. I think this process is an iterative one, and what finally emerges from the review may not look like what came in at the start as a result, and that's because of the work going on at school level by the schools themselves, and I think that's to be commended.
Thank you so much, James. Arwel, did you have your hand
up?
No,
the discussion with Marianne has answered my query. Thank you on that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm glad it's answered your query. I'm
well.
not sure if it's completely answered mine, but diolch Mari am eich gwaith. With any other particular issues? I know we sort of slip between the identification of income and the post-16 education. Are there any other questions the panel wishes to raise? I know the officers had a copy of these questions, and we're really running short of time, really. Any panel members? I can't remember who raised these questions in the pre-meeting. No? Okay. I'll chase up some of those with officers afterwards. We get another section here on grants, funding, and the funding flows. We've got that section, Appendix C, I think it was. Councillor Peat, was it you that raised the questions here around the establishment of transport grant that has been included in the revenue budget, still awaiting the amounts?
No, apologies, Aled. I wasn't at the pre-meet.
Oh, no. Good. We'll leave those questions hanging then until next time. And I know Councillor Jeremy has gone. I'll work with officers to respond to some of those questions and get them back to Councillor Jeremy. He was looking at the long-term business plan for the council. I know we've touched on some of those areas already through the. So I'm sure those questions have been raised in the past. Any other questions on the revenue budget panel before we move on to the capital? No. Good. Oh, sorry, Karina.
Sorry, is a late question. Yeah, no, it's just about the operator reimbursement funding for the buses. There's a lot of different bus grants all aggregated. Is that 12.5 million all for Powys? And just wondered if there's anybody there.
That's one for you, Mats. Is Matt still? Yeah, Matt's still.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So if I'm interpreting this right, there's been a combination. So we had a number of different grants that were all split up. But just to double check, you're referring to the 12.8 Regional Transport Delivery Plan?
Well, it looks like you've got lots of grants for buses, and they're about 15 million worth, or if you add them all together. And the 12.5 million is great. I think John Forsey mentioned it, but I wondered if part of that was going to go to Ceredigion as well, or have I made a mistake there?
Yeah, so we do have specific grants from Welsh Government, so like the My Travel Pass, so there is those elements which is specific to Powys. So we get grant to subsidise bus operators for free, like the pound travel for 16 to 21-year-olds. So that's direct then to Powys. And then the RTDP, which is the Regional Transport Delivery Plan, which includes things like active travel, that's split between us and Ceredigion.
Oh, so that's the confusion, because to my mind, you commission the bus companies outright to deliver the service. Is that a fair way of looking at it?
Yeah, so we got contracts with bus operators throughout Powys. So yeah, that's we commission those services then. Yeah.
So it's the buses are sort of 15 million in grants. That's what they've been able to get hold of.
Yeah, so looking at the integrated transport budget within HTR is a total of about 16 million. So that's a combination of home to school transport and public transport.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Karina. Can I just, sorry, Marianne, just a quick question on education again. The school reserves movements, table 4. Thank you very much for a more detailed table. But again, within each sector, those are net positions. When you look at the second to last column, high schools being 6.5 in deficit. What is the total deficit position when it's not netted off with the surpluses? Because when you net, because each individual line is a net position, isn't it?
I'll have to come back to you on that, Chair.
Okay. Could that be? I don't know how that could be, or perhaps that could be had in a comment and underneath the table or something about that, because that is the risk position of the council, not the net position. It's important to understand the difference there, because even the secondary net position is half the general reserve, isn't it? So it's quite a significant level of risk there. But I'll leave that for now. Diolch, Marianne. Can we move on to quarter 3 if there's no more questions? Capital report on quarter 3 if there's no more questions. David, did you want to give a quick overview on this before we dive in?
Yes, I'll do that, Chair. Thank you. So this is the capital focus for 25-26 as at 31st December 2025. Just to give some background, the capital programme was approved by Council in February, included schemes totalling £86.83 billion. That programme was revised on the 31st December 25 and is now budgeted at £91.73 million. That's following the successful award of additional grants and the reprofiling of budgets between financial years. The actual spend amounts to £36.32 million, which represents 39% of the total budget. And table 1 in the report gives a breakdown by service. Currently 33%, £30.19 million of capital expenditure is budgeted to be financed by borrowing. And of course, the interest cost for this is charged to the revenue account. At 2.5, you've got the capital programme funding breakdown, and section 3 lists grants that have been received, and they're mainly relating to highways, transport, recycling, community wellbeing and housing. Section 4 refers to reprofiling of budgets. In quarter 3, a thorough review of capital budgets was conducted, with certain capital funds have been reallocated across upcoming fiscal years to better reflect project timelines and anticipated expenditures. And table 3 actually gives the detail around the budget reprofiling carried out during quarter 3. Section 5 refers to the environments, and section 6 refers to capital receipts. Just say that £0.85 million has been received to date, and there are currently sales agreed to the value of £0.9 million. These are at the legal stage of the process and will generate future capital receipts. At this stage, it's expected that sales totaling £3 million could be achieved this financial year. Section 7 refers to the resource implications and the comments of the 151 officer And that concludes the report, Chair. If the Head of Finance or the 151 officer want to add any comments to what I've just said, then I'm sure that they'll be happy to do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. From what the question, one of the questions was around the significant reprofiling of the budgets. And you mentioned grants received. Is it all down to grants received?
Not all of it. Obviously, when it comes to reprofiling, there's a number of things that can actually contribute to reprofiling. There could be planning delays, there could be redesign to projects, there could be tender changes. There are numerous reasons for reprofiling. I think you've got the detail in the report there around individual projects, and the appendix that's included would give you specific service commentary.
Okay.
Around the programme.
Thank you very much. Panel, what are your? We've had a number of questions in pre-cabinet, pre-panel meeting. Are there any issues you wish to raise, Karina? Thank you, Karina.
Yes, apparently we are in receipt of almost £50 million in grants to help with capital funding this year. How sure are you that you'll get the same sort of grants next year?
David, just cross the council sort of question. I'm guessing is according to.
I guess there's so much uncertainty around at the moment. I wouldn't want to commit to any figure in relation to anything, bearing in mind that we've got an election in May. So we don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if head of finance. I see the head of finance has got a hand up there. Perhaps she'd like to comment on that.
I guess it's a lot to do with what projects are coming forward as well. Mary, have you got predictions on the outcome of the elections?
No, not predictions on the outcome of elections. I'm definitely not going there. So we do get indicative figures through the settlement on both revenue and capital for grants, but they're not 100% complete usually by the time we get the final settlement. Quite often ministers have got time after Welsh Government sets their budget to set the grants that they're going to distribute from their sort of portfolio as well. So, but we do get some indication, and there are some that have been in place, particularly on the capital side, for some time that we can rely on generally. But obviously, this is quite an exceptional year, really, as Councillor David referred to. So, but we do get that indication, so we can provide an element of planning, and we work on that best information that we have at the time, really.
Yeah, especially around school transformation, you need that long-term certainty. Aaron.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just on 6.1, it says that we've had already 850,000 in from capital receipts and another 900,000 sort of agreed. Is that from the sale of county farm estates or other assets, please?
David,
breakdown. Yeah, so happily say. So that's from the sale of a range of assets, Councillor Arwell. So we can provide a list of all assets that are going through the pipeline, some of which will be from the county farm estate, and others will be other assets, whether they're commercial premises, industrial units, bare parcels of land. As you know, we're looking at all of our assets to ensure that we have the right assets in the right place, primarily to deliver the services that we're required to do. And just a reminder that the farm estate isn't a statutory function of the council. It's something that we choose to do. And you've rightly pointed out that we do have to balance the range of assets that we have and the opportunity that the sale of assets gives us in terms of the borrowing that we want to do to deliver other services. So we have an ambitious school building programme that you'll be aware of. And for every £1 million that we have to borrow, that puts £60,000, I think, Councillor David, onto our revenue costs per year for the length of that, say, 35 year loan for it. So even if we manage to sell £3 million worth of assets, as is projected by year end, that would be £3 million worth less borrowing to achieve our capital programme ambitions.
Oh, Les would be grateful. Yeah, thank you, Jake.
Diolch yn fawr, Councillor Pete.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just had two questions, if I may, around Appendix A on the service commentaries. First one's on, I think it's page 39 of the pack, highways. And the phrase that's used there a lot is some of the bullets are that the programs are generally on track. And that terminology for me sort of implies some are and some aren't. So I just wondered, A, if that's right, and B, what is at risk if some of them aren't on track. And the other one is then on the next page on the housing revenue account. And that says, I think it's the second bullet there, unavoidable and unforeseen regulatory delays. And again, for me, in my previous work in life, regulatory bodies tend to be very slow moving and they do issue regulations well in advance of implementation. So I just wondered what these unavoidable delays were and why they were unavoidable.
The capital accountants is not here. Mary, would you like to take that up? I know it's probably very difficult. It's difficult. Matt Perry's got his hand up because a lot of those apply to highways, I'm guessing. Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Pete. So in terms of the highways capital, without getting into the detail, I'm assured by the service that most of these now will be covered off in terms of Q4. So we've got 30% of the capital spend left. We do sometimes, I think as we mentioned earlier, we do sometimes have a curveball that will come in that we'll have to deal with a damaged bridge or, which can take us off sync. But generally, if nothing comes untoward, we should be fine to deliver. And in terms of many of the projects, if we're not, we'll roll it forward then to next year. And then in terms of the HRA, we do sometimes in terms of housing development get some restrictions, particularly if there's issues we could do with. I'm just trying to think of an example in Landod. We had the issue with the newts on the Alice Day Centre. It's those biodiversity elements that sometimes can creep in and delay a project or any health issues. So those are the types of things that potentially could delay a build.
Councillor Pete, are you?
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. Yeah, no, thanks, Matt. So, yeah, that was probably me misreading that. I was trying to think it was like there were some regulations out there that we didn't know about, whereas it's the other way around. We know about it, but it's the implication of that regulation that's caused the delay. Yeah, no, thanks for the explanation, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you. I know one of our members has had to leave was very concerned about the profiling of works throughout the year, but I'm guessing some of this reporting is historical to some degree, and the financial elements take a while to catch up with after the work. Would that be a fair statement, or because his suggestion was a lot of the capital works, if it was well planned, would take place in the summer months, especially around roads, because of the potentially longer days and better working conditions. Is that something that's taken into consideration, Matt?
Yes, it is. And I met with Councillor Jeremy on this, and myself and John Forsey met with the team. So we are mindful because there was a lot coming through in the summer, but it did feel like at the beginning, certainly between sort of April and May, there was a bit of a lull. So we are bringing that element as forward as much as possible. So, for example, I know there's a depot meeting today at Welshpool regarding highways, and the area manager is going through the capital programme with those local members. So we are trying with you as local members to give you that insight very early on in terms of where the capital programme is going.
Thank you. And unfortunately, this local member has been double booked, as Councillor Arwell as well, which is a little bit frustrating. Thank you, Karina.
I was just going to ask, Matt, aren't your workforce largely engaged on trunk roads in the summer? And doesn't that complicate things?
Yeah, so we are heavily reliant on contractors within Powys as well. So we do use a combination of our staff and local contractors. So essentially, we keep keeping the money within Powys essentially. So we are reliant on them, particularly for some of the larger resurfacing schemes. But yeah, it's a combination of both.
It just seems to me difficult to do all the work in the shoulder months on our roads, on the sort of B and C roads. That's all. Yeah, thank you.
And there's also quite a bit of concern around the level of full-time employees present within certain depots. You hear narrative around, as you know, almost half of the workforce not being in post at certain times. But I'm guessing that's more for ECRG scrutiny committee to look at the workforce issues around that. Just quick question. I've just got the one before finishing. Just for clarity, when a school project is built, I can think of, I remember the 151 comment on the Ysgol Bro Hyddgain in Machynlleth. There was a potential charge of, I can't remember what it was it 3,900 per pupil, 3,900 per pupil, or cost of the new build for the next 40 odd years? Does that fall on the whole council, or is the education service picking up that element of the capital cost? How is it accounted for? Thank you.
Can I come in, Councillor Mallard?
Diolch, Mary.
Which part of the paper is this relevant to? I'm confused.
The cost of borrowing.
Okay.
Where does it fall? On the whole council or within the service?
On the whole council.
Okay, that's fine. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you. Any other questions on capital? We did a few in the pre-meeting. A lot of them were generated by Councillor Jeremy. Members, are there any others? Karina, thank you so much.
Just about schools decarbonisation, I think there was $1 million allocated. It said it's programmed in. I just wondered, I think we've been waiting a while for that, have we? Thank you.
Would like to pick that up.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not sure what the actual question is.
I apologise. No, I noticed that 1 million for school decarbonisation has been programmed in, but I thought we were going to do that a year or so ago, so I'm just asking. For clarification from the building.
Diane. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I don't think I'm going to be able to answer the question today, but we can obviously pick that up through a scrutiny session in more detail if that wants to be investigated. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. Well,
thank you.
Thank you, Marianne.
Yes, apologies. My mouse wasn't working in order for me to put myself off microphone and raise my hand. So the 1 million additional funding is in relation to, a lot of it is around the site safeguarding works that Cabinet approved this year, so that forms part of it. There are other grants then that we're using for the carbon offset work. So we can give you some more clarity on that if you wish in future.
Thank you, Mary, and that'd be appreciated. A little bit of on the carbon offsetting. We've quite well versed with the safeguarding issues. James, your hand popped up and popped back down, but has Marianne?
Yes, she's answered it. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. One other question. There was quite a bit of discussion in pre-meeting about the tendering process, especially with high costs, and one or two members were querying how officers challenged the tender submissions and to ensure that we get best value for money. Mary, would you like to give assurance around this, please?
Yes, of course. Yeah, we go through quite a robust tendering process. We will ask for lots of different elements within that process as well, that we can then compare the submissions that we receive and make sure that we're getting the best value from those tenders. There is challenge around them. There needs to be benchmarking around them as well, and making sure that we are looking for the lowest tender costs that we can achieve. I don't know if anybody who's any service.
Is this all in-house, the tendering team, or do you, especially with some big projects, and or do you use resources from outside the council to check some of these multi-million-pound projects and compare them with other local authorities, the costs that they incur? I know there was a paper some years ago about the additional costs in very rural areas where the competition wasn't as fierce for projects. Jane?
Yeah, if I can come in, Chair, I think through the whole tender and procurement process, there's a clear set of evaluation areas that we look at when we consider bids. So any bid that comes in is scored against those valuation elements. They could be cost, they could be more quality and that aspect as well. So it would be a mix of both. But I can assure you, we do challenge costs quite heavily. We've had a number of schemes that have come through where the costs have completely been so significantly higher than what we expected. Therefore, we've not proceeded with those tenders. We've looked at what we can do to reevaluate the project, to bring that cost down. And in some instances, we've had to go out to further tenders to deliver against that. So we do a lot of re-engineering on projects to try and drive that cost down. We do keep a keen eye on what's happening elsewhere. We do consider our costs against those in other authorities. We consider costs against benchmarks provided by Welsh Government. So we do continually keep an eye on that to make sure that what we're spending is appropriate and can be challenged in that way. We do have particular challenges in projects being delivered in certain parts of the county. And that's purely down to the availability of contractors in some areas and the distance that needs to be travelled sometimes for contractors to actually deliver on those projects. But just to give you full assurance that we do monitor that, and clearly robust business cases right at the start are a key element of that.
Thank you so much, Jane. Marianne?
Yeah, just to add to the capacity question, a lot of the work goes on in-house, but in terms of the Sustainable Communities for Learning programme, the school building programme, we've also procured AECOM as well to give us some additional cost management expertise and capacity, so that they can take on a lot of the burden in terms of the procurement, obviously working closely with the teams, the internal teams.
Okay, diolch. Jake, it's been suggested to me that the councillors would benefit from a seminar that discusses how tenders are evaluated and challenged. I'm not sure whether that's a whole seminar's worth of information, but that's been suggested. But you had other thoughts. Go on, James.
Sorry, no, I wasn't going to discourage anything, and more we can share about the process. I mean, obviously, from we've got a capital oversight working group, and there's a process, and you're quite right that other than cabinet looking at outline business cases for major projects and moving through a process of the cost evaluation and signing off on business cases, obviously we need to be satisfied that we are getting best value and ringing every ringing this out to ensure that we get the best deal we possibly can. I just wanted to highlight there's some of this is formal and some of it is informal as well. You talked about learning from others, and I just wanted to, we've talked at ACOM there, I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that Powys is also an active member of something which is called CLAW, the Consortium of Local Government Authorities in Wales. I chair that at the moment for the second year. We do a 2-year term, and that is our teams through design and property collaborating with others across Wales over major building projects, whether it's housing, schools, offices, etc., etc., to look at what best practice looks like and have draw together learning, training opportunities, etc. So at different levels, there is a lot that we do to ensure that we get the best value we possibly can. But I agree, Councillor Aled, probably not a whole session, but perhaps a detailed oversight of what we do throughout this procurement process might be quite valuable, perhaps as part of a wider financial session that we have.
Thank you, Leader. And just to put it on record, I think the team within Powys have won awards in the recent past as well. But sometimes legislation and local additional stuff asks them to do too much, and that adds a layer of cost to the tender as well. So it can be a difficult balance to strike. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, you taking the words out of my mouth there, actually, Chair. I was going to mention the fact that the awards that the team have won in the past, but it's worth bearing in mind, as has been said, as the leader said, we've got the Capital Oversight Board that monitor and manage the situation. I think they're actually the service-specific boards as well that keep an eye on the situation. And when we're looking at multi-million-pound projects, many of those would be within schools transformation. And indeed, the ultimate check there, I suppose, is Welsh Government, because if they're not happy with the process, they're not going to actually make a contribution on their behalf to the programme itself. So I think the checks are in place, and with everything that's been said, I think we can take some reassurance from that things are generally in order.
Yeah, I agree with you. And when local governments or any public sector organisation go through a tendering process, is far more onerous than in the private sector, because you often have that comment about council does something costs 3 times as much as a local contractor could do it. So a bit of an explanation around that in a seminar would be useful to understand those additional layers of scrutiny and costs that are involved in these huge capital program. We talk about best part of £100 million every year. It's quite significant. So thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. If there's no other business, we'll just go to any other comments on the capital program. I should have a quick look at the agenda to make sure I haven't missed anything. We'll go back and look at the recommendations that are rising from these 2 Q3 reports. Any other comments before we move on to that? No? Right. Recommendations. Kath, you have been jotting stuff down in the background. Can we just mention that possible seminar as one of the recommendations? And panel members, please shout out if you disagree or you've got something to add. Kath?
Yeah. Yes, Chair.
Sorry, have you been taking notes at all? I wanted something around this size of the deficit within the schools delegated.
Okay.
Sorry, just looking back through my notes. Do we need anything on benchmarking around adult social services, or some key headline stats, or are they all adequately covered within the Children's and Adults Scrutiny Committee? They are. Jane's nodding her head. Jane.
Yeah, I think we need to be careful, don't we? If you think about what we're considering here, it's the monitoring against the budget that's been set in the year. Some of those other elements would definitely feature in other scrutiny committees as part of the challenge against the service. I think that can be said too in terms of the school delegated position and the reserves. There's a paper that comes on school reserves and how many are in surplus, how many are in deficit. That's in another paper, and that's not really relevant to the budget monitoring against that particular year's budget. I think we just got to be careful we're not trying to duplicate the work of other committees.
I do understand, but the level of deficit within the schools delegated is, it's more than half the general reserve. So there's a significant risk around that. So it's just the one figure I'd like to see, really. This paper produces the net positions, but it's just the one number of the total deficits which sits on the balance sheets across all schools.
Perhaps, Chair, if I can give you a reminder of when that report came, we can point you back to that would have given you all that detail. But I can send the link for that so that you've got it readily to hand.
But it does vary throughout the year, doesn't it?
But you've got the variance against the year in this budget, in this report.
Of the net position.
Yes.
Okay. Obviously, we have to have an argument of
Happy to have a further discussion.
Okay, thanks, Jane. Any other recommendations? I know Councillor Chris welcomed the improvements on the net position of the budget. No, Councillor Chris. Oh, sorry, Chris, you're on mute.
And I'm pleased that you've noted that, because I think it's important that we celebrate when we have the opportunity to do so. And I think there's a lot of good. Can I say that, listening to the questions and the responses from officers throughout has been really helpful, and I think gives some clarity to some of those situations. And certainly from a health perspective in relation to the Dom Kerr issue and the day opportunities, those are areas that I will watch out for within the health scrutiny now, to be obviously pick those up on the but comments are made to be helpful, not to actually move us in the wrong way. One thing I did pick up is that in response to savings feedback was one of the things that Jeremy had mentioned. We said we had a report previously, so just making a note that we will be looking forward to having that commentary back about the lessons learned from that area.
Yeah, it's an end of year financial report, generally in June from memory, and it'll outline the position, actual position, not the forecast position, and the commentary around non-delivery of savings and any other variance within the budget. And hopefully that's the time for scrutiny to dig in and understand the challenges around that. So Kath has put up a few recommendations. And I note Jane's comments as well about keeping it at a fairly high level. But one potential recommendation is to introduce year in, in-year enhanced in-year forecasting assurance for service areas with historically volatile budgets, and that was a sort of flows out of the temporary accommodation and the adult services. Member, do you want a greater commentary on that? And that's contained in Appendix E, I think it is. There's serious commentary there, isn't there? Do you want an increased level of commentary there or not? Or are you satisfied with the existing comments? Chief Exec.
Chair, just could you help me understand that? Because this is a Q3, so it is an in-year report, an update again. So am I missing something? Sorry,
No,
just clarity.
It was it's flicked from Q2 to Q3 of the £1.8 million savings was expected to be delivered, and now it's gone to unlikely to be delivered.
So responses to questions have been given in this committee about that difference. So what would be needed? What would be different going forward than what you've had today? That's what I'm trying to understand. What are you looking for?
That was my question to the committee.
Okay.
Jane.
Can I just ask then, so within the commentary from the service, that is where the opportunity for that to be explained is. So I suppose for committee, it's looking at that and deciding whether that's sufficient, and perhaps that may be where you want to form your question. If you feel it's not sufficient or you haven't had sufficient information in there, that probably needs to be strengthened, and perhaps that's a recommendation.
Yes, well, that's what I was thinking at. I was wondering whether the committee were satisfied with the explanation in the appendix or not, or whether it needs to be strengthened. And I haven't. Can I say when there's there's no response here. So can I say that we need it strengthened, especially when there's dramatic shifts in that particular budget? Councillor David.
Yeah, just on reflection, if there's already an explanation in the commentary with regard to problems with savings delivery against a particular savings line, if we're saying that isn't sufficient, then isn't that what the committee's all about? That's a green light really for interrogating portfolio holders and members at committee.
Yeah.
So I think as long as there is an explanation in there, it's just a question. If we're then saying after reading that explanation that the committee aren't satisfied with the detail contained in it, then it's for the committee at this hearing, at a meeting like this, to actually draw out any additional information, and that's what we have been doing.
Yeah. Okay. And there's always that balance. Between diving in too deeply, as Jane's pointed out, it's with that high level and high risk areas that we need to focus on. Okay. I was just scanning through the potential recommendations, and I think most of those things were answered during the committee, to be honest with you. And as Councillor David was saying, we need to, when we're not satisfied with the explanation in Appendix B, we need to challenge it at that point. So thank you, committee. There's a couple of questions there, but I'll take them away and talk to officers behind the scenes and come back to the committee, if that's okay. Okay, happy. So there's just that one recommendation around the potential seminar on the tendering process. Okay, thanks all. Thanks for your attendance, officers and cabinet members and committee members. Thank you all. Take care.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye-bye.